the nama rupa that are arising in the present, one may not be able to note all of them. An ordinary yogi cannot follow every nama rupa. So Sayadaw chose an example which is more obvious, and Sayadaw chose the example of hearing. In the hearing, there are the nama rupa arising. In the hearing, there are a lot of rupa, materiality, as well as a lot of nama, mentality, arising. In the hearing, what manifests is the receptor element, the ear base, such as hearing is taking place at this place because there are ears, hearing takes place. And also, it is where the sound waves strikes. At the moment of hearing, there are also other materiality that are involved in the hearing. The receptor element is the materiality. Striker element is also materiality. And one should be mindful of the hearing. Every time the consciousness arises, there are 7 cetasika, 7 mental factors involved in every consciousness. Among these 7, there is phassa, contact, and vedana, feeling. In seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling, tasting, touching, and knowing, there are the striker element and the reception element. The consciousness only takes the object. The consciousness takes the striker element as the object, and it doesn't do anything more. So the striker element does not discriminate whether the object is eta, favorable, desirable, or whether the object is anatta, undesirable. So the ignition element, seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, do not discriminate whether the object is desirable or undesirable. So the ignition element, the seeing consciousness or hearing consciousness, take the object, the striker element, as the object. And in the receptor element, the ignition element and the striker element come into contact. In the hearing, the sound wave and hearing consciousness come into contact at the ear base. And there will be hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling. When the sound waves strike the ear base, hearing consciousness takes place. So in the ears, the hearing consciousness and the sound waves come into contact. And if the sound is pleasant, there will be good hearing feeling. If the sound is unpleasant, there will be unpleasant hearing feeling. And if the sound is neutral, there will be neither good nor bad feeling. So the consciousness, in order to discern the consciousness, the contact and the feeling, one should be mindful whenever one sees, hears, smells, tastes and touch. So every time one sees, every time one hears, one should be mindful. Every time there is touching, one should be mindful. One should be mindful of the rising, falling, bending, stretching, turning, opening and closing of the eyes, blinking, and so on. From the time one wakes up until one falls fast asleep, at the time one is awake, one should be mindful of these objects. And most of all, one has to be mindful of the touch. There are less time that the person has to be mindful of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, but most of the time, yogi has to be noting the touch. And also, when thoughts and imaginations arise, yogi has to be mindful of them. By being mindful of the presently arising object, one will discern the nama rupa distinctly and clearly. One will discern the nama rupa that really exists very clearly and distinctly. So the most important example is the hearing. When hearing takes place, there are the nama and rupa arising in the hearing, and one should note as a whole, just as hearing. When noting hearing, one should have the effort, one should exert effort in the noting. One should have ardent effort, full of alertness, readiness. There should also be courage, viriya. As soon as the object arises, one should exert effort so that the noting mind will be pushed onto the object. And also, one should make the effort so that there will be sustained mindfulness on the object. Aiming, directing is one of the jhanic factors. By noting the object with aim and effort, khanika samadhi, momentary concentration, will be cultivated. Noting the object with aim and effort, sati and samadhi, mindfulness and concentration will follow. When the yogi notes the object respectfully, meticulously, according to the guidance and instruction, it will not take long for the yogi to discern. Even within 2 or 3 days, yogi will cultivate knowledge. If the person has not cultivated knowledge within a certain time, it shows that yogi is not exerting effort in the practice. So it shows that the person is not exerting sufficient effort in noting the object. It shows that the noting is not concurrent in the object. And it also shows that the person is not aiming properly at the object, and it also shows that the yogi is practicing flippantly. Rather than noting the object, as soon as the object arises, but if the yogi is thinking what it is, why is it, then the object has already passed and the person misses or fails to note the object. Thinking what it is, why is it, yogi cannot note the object in time, so that the mind flips away from the object. So it is very important to practice accurately, precisely, according to the guidance given. So Sayadaw strongly encourages the yogis to practice accurately, precisely, according to the guidance. By noting hearing, as soon as hearing takes place, what will be the benefit? And by failing to note hearing right away, being slow to note, what will be the bad results? And Sayadaw explained. By noting hearing, as soon as the hearing takes place, is to have the bhavana mind, the developed mind on the hearing. In order to have mindfulness, sati, in order to have samadhi, concentration, one should note hearing so that it will be mere hearing. Being mindful of the hearing, even though the sound may be pleasant, but there will not be craving, raga, lust, does not arise connected with the hearing when the person is mindful. Even though the sound may be unpleasant, undesirable, but anger, aversion does not arise connected with the hearing when one is noting hearing. By noting hearing, one's mind falls on the nama rupa at the moment of hearing. So, however, the sound may be pleasant, but greed does not arise. By noting hearing, one discerns that the rupa cause is giving rise to nama effect, and one discerns that these rupa are the cause and the nama are the effect. Discerning, one removes not knowing. By discerning correctly, there will no longer be wrong knowing. Avijja, ignorance, arises if knowledge does not arise. By discerning correctly, knowing wrongly will be dispelled. The example is given when the eyes have cataract, the eyes cannot see at all, or even if the person sees, one will see very vaguely, having cataract in the eyes. So in the same way, if there is ignorance, avijja, one does not know correctly at all, or even if the person knows wrongly with avijja, ignorance. Discerning cause and effect, discerning that relevant cause gives rise to relevant effect, one removes the wrong view of causelessness. And discerning relevant cause gives rise to relevant effect, one will not believe in the wrong things as the cause. If there is knowing correctly, knowing wrongly will automatically be dispelled. If there is not knowing, the mind will be slipping away from the truth, knowing wrongly, and there will also be lack of moral shame and lack of moral fear. So by being mindful of the object, discerning correctly, ignorance will be removed. And also, one will not be having lack of moral shame, lack of moral fear, and one also controls oneself from wrongdoing. Lokapala are the guardian of the world. Hiri and Uttapa, moral shame and moral fear, protect the world, and thus they are called Lokapala. And they are also called as Sukha Dhamma, as they are white, pure Dhamma. When one is not deviated from the correct path, then one's mind will not be polluted with the defilements. Even though one comes across desirable sounds, there will not be greed. Even though there are unpleasant sounds, one will not have anger or aversion or hatred. In this way, in order not to indulge in these defilements, Hiri and Uttapa, moral shame and moral fear, protects the person from being polluted with defilements. Hiri and Uttapa are compared to the white color. White color repels the heat. In the same way, the white color of Hiri and Uttapa repels the heat of defilement, and thus Hiri and Uttapa, moral shame and moral fear, are compared to white color. The white color repels heat, black color absorbs heat. In the same way, Hiri and Uttapa, moral shame and moral fear, repels the unwholesomeness. Lack of moral shame and lack of moral fear absorbs the unwholesomeness. Noting the object with aim and effort, the mind will not go elsewhere. The mind falls on the nama rupa at the moment of hearing by noting hearing, so that there is no gap between the noting mind and the object. The mind is not distant from the object. The mind does not run elsewhere, and thus the mind is free from uddaca, restlessness. If there is no mindfulness, the mind runs elsewhere. There will be restlessness, worry, but being mindful of the hearing, greed does not arise with the pleasant sound that has been heard, and hatred, aversion does not arise on the unpleasant sound. Being mindful with aim and effort at the moment of hearing, there will be sustained mindfulness on the object. The noting mind is concurrent with the object, and the person discerns knowing that the sound waves and the ear base are the cause, which are rupa, materiality, hearing consciousness, hearing contact, and hearing feeling are the nama, mentality, which is the effect. In this way, the person discerns the cause and effect clearly, distinctly, and it will be paccaya bhavatthana, discerning the cause and effect. And it is also called paccaya parikkaha jnana. The word is different, but actually it is the same knowledge, discerning the cause and effect, discerning that relevant cause gives rise to relevant effect. Discerning that relevant cause gives rise to relevant effect, one removes the wrong view of Creator. There is no Creator at all. There is no work of the Creator at all. What really arises are the nama rupa as cause and effect. And discerning that there is no Creator, but there is only the nama rupa arising as cause and effect, one cultivates yatha bhuta nupassana, discerning in the way the nama rupa really exists. So by discerning, by cultivating yatha bhuta nupassana, one discerns that in the past as well, they are arising as cause and effect. In the future as well, they are arising as cause and effect. So these nama rupa are arising as cause and effect in the past, as well as the future, as well as the present. By being mindful of the hearing, one discerns correctly and one removes the wrong view, uncertainty, and doubt. The person who has moral shame and moral fear from the defilements that can arise by lack of mindfulness, having moral shame and moral fear, one notes and be mindful every time one sees, hears, smells, tastes, and touch. Noting these objects respectfully, meticulously, viriya, effort, is present. The mind is concurrent with the object. Sati and samadhi, mindfulness and concentration develops, and one discerns the nama rupa clearly, distinctly, and correctly. By discerning, one removes not knowing. Not knowing correctly, there will be knowing wrongly. By discerning cause and effect, one removes the uncertainty and doubt. If the person is not being mindful, the mind will not be calm and collected, and one does not discern the nama rupa or cause and effect, and there will be a big layer of not knowing. Even in this life, before the person practices Vipassana meditation, before one practices, one did not discern the nama rupa. So there is moha patala, a big layer of delusion, a thick layer of delusion. So the delusion has been a big barrier before one practices the Satipatthana meditation. By practicing Satipatthana meditation, discerning cause and effect clearly, one cultivates Yatha Bhuta-nupassana. Cultivating Yatha Bhuta-nupassana, one removes Samoha Binivesa. Samoha means gross, intense delusion. Having gross, intense delusion, having Samoha, one is dim and vague, not being certain. One does not discern at all, or one discerns dimly, vaguely. Having Samoha, having intense delusion, one does not discern the cause and effect based on the object. So it is very far from discerning impermanent suffering and non-self. Being uncertain, one will not discern certainly. One cannot have faith, confidence. One does not have acceptance, confirmation, or decision accurately. So the wrong view has been deeply seated within the realm of existences, and there is Samoha Binivesa, having thick, intense delusion. Not having Yatha Bhuta-nupassana, one does not discern the Nama Rupa, cause and effect, and thus thick, intense layer of delusion is deeply seated in the person. Having delusion, the person knows wrongly, and it is called Mithya Jnana, meaning knowing wrongly. So in the world, most of the people do not discern cause and effect, and thus they are in the big forest of defilements. So it is a pity that they are in the big, dense forest of defilements. Practicing Satipatthana meditation, one discerns cause and effect clearly, distinctly, and Samoha Binivesa will be removed. Thick, dense layer of delusion is removed by discerning. Before one walks on the Satipatthana path, before one practices, there has been uncertainty, doubt, and confusion. The person believes that there is the Mahabrahma creating inanimate and animate things. In the moment of hearing, the Rupa's cause gives rise to Nama effect. By being mindful of the hearing, discerning that Rupa cause gives rise to Nama effect clearly, then one understands that relevant cause gives rise to relevant effect, and one discerns Yatha Bhuta-nupassana. Cultivating Yatha Bhuta-nupassana, one removes the Samoha, one removes the intense defilements that had been deeply seated throughout the round of existences. So by cultivating Yatha Bhuta-nupassana, one removes the Samoha, intense delusion, removing uncertainty and doubt. By practicing respectfully, meticulously, to the yogi who practices respectfully, meticulously, the yogi removes the intense delusion, even within minutes. By removing intense delusion, by discerning Yatha Bhuta-nupassana jnana, in the text it is said that the person gains the Dhamma to rely on, to depend on in the teaching of the Buddha. So it is said that the person who is endowed with Yatha Bhuta-nupassana jnana, discerning cause and effect, gains reliance or something to depend on in this Buddhist culture, as the person has faith and confidence that this teaching, this practice is correct without having any uncertainty or doubt. Before this stage, one has been believing as the Mahabrahma, creating, there has been wrong view, uncertainty and doubt, and thus the person is said to be out of breath, without having anything to rely on. The person fears that the Creator will not be happy with him or her, and thus the person is out of breath, not having anything to rely on. Discerning cause and effect, it is said that asasa, one is relieved from being out of breath, meaning that the person has easy breathing, feeling light. Having discerned the cause and effect, one has the reliance, or one has the Dhamma to depend on in this Buddha's teaching. Having attained knowledge into cause and effect, the person becomes Culasotapanna, minor stream enterer. And by practicing further, practicing straight on the path of Satipatthana, one can become Mahasotapanna, the great stream enterer. Having become Mahasotapanna, one realizes apavada, the total cessation. Pavada is the continuous arising of the nama rupa. As the person realizes nibbana by attaining the first path knowledge, one realizes the cessation by attaining path knowledge. So the person who has attained the Yatha Bhuta-nupassana, discerning cause and effect, has become a Culasotapanna, minor stream enterer, and the person has the potential to become a great stream enterer by continuing the practice. An hour is up. This will be all for today. This is quite profound and wide, but Sayadaw will explain from both theoretical and practical aspects in order to enable the yogis to understand, and Sayadaw will take a few days to explain further, and this will be all for today.